Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and here today I'd like to speak to you about the week leading up to the Capricorn full moon on the 10th of July. And we're going to begin with the 4th of July. So I'm recording this on the 3rd, so just a week before the full moon. And it's quite a busy sky, a very busy, highly aspected and highly changeable sky leading up to this full moon. And we'll have a look at all of the different events all the way through to Saturn stationing retrograde on the 13th. So they're all interlinked. Lots to reflect on, lots to think about. For those of you who are watching rather than just listening, you can see everything I'm talking about on the screen. So every now and then I get the radical, real, or so-called true sky as astrology enthusiasts telling me that I'm using tropical astrology. I'm so glad you pointed that out to me. It's here on the screen. And yes, tropical astrology is valid. It's based on the movement or tropos of the sun over the equators and up to the tropics of Cancer and down to the tropics of Capricorn. That makes our equinoxes and solstices. So this is what we're working with. It's our star. The sun is our star. You can also cast a chart for other stars. The sidereal chart is based on stars that are not connected to our sun. But that show up in different constellations. These are not the same way of calculating. And so you'll get different placements, and both are great. Both have fantastic results. I find this one the most accurate for my experience and for the experience of our political and social environment. So I stick with it. After having studied both systems for quite some time, I still find that this gives me more clarity based on the world we live in. So you do you, and you don't necessarily have to go around slandering other people who do something different. It's not that it's wrong, it's different. It's a different way. So please study what is tropical astrology before you demean it and call it fake or incorrect. So we're dealing with something here that has its own validity. It's got its own internal reasoning. So that's why I've chosen this system. Right, so let's get that out of the way. And the other aspect of this is I want to mention that I am a consulting astrologer. My way of sponsoring these videos is that you come to me for consultations. And so my audience is extremely generous. And some of you also are supporting me through PayPal, which is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. And also buying me coffee or chai, as I ask for. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And if you're not doing that, that's no problem, but maybe you could share my videos or at least like and subscribe to the channel because it does help people find me. And that means that I can find clients and clients can find results in their lives. So this is why I do what I do. I don't monetize my channel. So it does depend on your interaction with me, how much I can move forward in my life based on what I'm contributing here. I also love to read your comments. I love to read questions when they're personal or things that are a little too close to needing to understand your natal chart. I won't be able to give you answers. So that's always going to be the case. It's not because I don't want to, but because I really cannot do that in respect of the tradition, in respect of the actual profession of astrologer. It is dumbing down astrology to give you any kind of really solid interpretation based on one placement. Sometimes I can be more specific depending on the topic, but if you tell me you've got, I don't know, your moon is in the eighth house, and what does this mean for you? Well, I have no way of knowing because I need to know your chart. I need to know your date of birth, which puts you into a generational context. I need to know so many things, including your culture. By the way, what one thing means to one individual in a particular part of the world will mean something slightly different to another individual in another part of the world. So keep that in mind and try to keep your comments or your questions in a general sense, more open to understanding astrology rather than your chart. And if you want to understand your chart, then come and see me. And you'll find all my details below the video, and you'll find all my details in the channel information as well. The last bit of advertising I want to do here is that I'm launching my intermediate course for the second time And that is starting on the 27th of July. It was initially the 24th. I had to shift that a little bit because of my own personal schedule and travel schedule. And so we're going to begin on the 27th of July. And it's going to be fantastic as a group. We're going to look at the way that we can find our ancestors in the chart, why we understand why some planets work, why some planets don't work for certain people, what they represent. Sometimes exalted planets or debilitated planets give fantastic results or otherwise not great results. And why is that? All of these little details help us understand how to read a natal chart better. So if you're interested in that and you already have a solid grasp of the basics of astrology, then jump in and join the class that's beginning at the end of this month. And if you want more of the beginner basics, then that will also be available at the end of this month, but it will be a recorded course. I won't be participating with you on that. I might do a live workshop with those who've registered for that beginner course, but that would be later and not part of the actual course, just so we can ask questions and clarify certain things. Right, so that's that out of the way. Oh, by the way, Roisin, my dear friend Roisin, who some of you already know, and you will find her in a couple of videos with me on this channel. She's a mystic, a seer, psychic, a medium. She is an extraordinary person. And Roisin came to join our first iteration of the course and really blew people away because she was helping specifically with individual blockages to intuition and helping people really find something about themselves that made them better at what they're doing. And even if it's not related to astrology, it certainly clears some things. And that's what we're doing that in association with that course. And so I really highly recommend that you take that module as well, which is separate. And then just before I forget, those who did the course the first time, if you want to survey the course again, if you want to come back and retake the course, you can do it again for 50% off. So I'll send you that in our special chat group that we had for the course. I'll send you the code to get that. Right. Let's come to this moment again. Where we're looking at now from the 4th of July, all of the activity that's kicking off this extraordinary week leading up to the full moon in Capricorn. We have, to begin, Venus in a conjunction with Uranus. Now, this happens every year, sometimes a little faster because Venus has a cycle of 9 months or 18 months, depending on whether she's retrograding or not. And so here we find Venus coming together with Uranus for the first time since last year. And it's at the very end of Taurus. That's Venus's sign, Taurus. And Venus and Uranus coming together is really deep insight into all of those Taurian issues. And when we go through the sign by sign, I'll be pointing this out in your chart. But it's quite interesting because it's like a wrapping up of all of the things that we've been looking at for 7 years in this part of your chart, in this part of our social experience, around things to do with security, around financial security, around using money, using possessions. What are the values of finances or possessions or modes of exchanging currencies? And so there's been a lot of change around this in 7 years. Venus is also what makes us feel secure or happy, what we desire in our life. And that's why there's such a strong resonance with Taurus. And Uranus is almost the opposite of that dynamic. Taurus is a fixed sign also, so resistant to change. I like things to be predictable and comfortable. Whereas Uranus is, no, things need to change. Things need to be broken up and separated and shaken up, and insights need to come in so it gets you moving forward. Now, this can be particularly uncomfortable. And again, that will depend on your personality. It depends on a lot of different factors. And also this can be something that is exciting. So that, again, depends on your natal chart and the circumstances that you're in. And so the other thing that maybe is worth pointing out at this stage is that in the comments, a couple of people had made comments around Uranus being good. And this is a good idea. It's good. Uranus is going to bring good things. And as far as I am concerned, there's no good or bad in life or in astrology. Things happen. And how we respond to that is going to determine how we relate to the quality. Is it good for us or bad for us in this moment? And there's, just like the Zen parable teaches us, I don't know. Is it good? Is it bad? Because things keep evolving. And then what felt like a good thing is actually not a great thing. And then what felt like a bad thing actually turns out to be a blessing in disguise. So don't try to pin these planets or the symbolisms to one or another identity. There's a lot of flux in all of the planets, and most especially in Uranus. Uranus is, let's say, changeable regardless of whether you think that's good or bad. It doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't care what you believe. And this brings me to this whole sort of energy of the period of time, but also leading up to this full moon in Capricorn, which is very much about our need for certainty around things, which is actually a disguised compulsion for control of situations. So we might feel like everything has to be positive. It's all going to be great. Things are going to work out fantastic. Don't mention anything negative. Or the opposite. It's all going to be crap and things are falling apart and nothing is working and I hate this planet and whatever the thing is. And both of those are delusional ways of thinking because it's just creating a certainty that is actually never true, that we're never even close to the reality when we can talk about certainty. Certainty is what the ego needs to feel secure. And this is part of the dynamic of Taurus. I want things to remain predictable. I want things to remain the same. That's a fixed sign quality, but especially in Taurus, because it's the environment that we want to be the same. We don't like change. Change comes very slowly or too late because often we wait because we're afraid of the change that is actually necessary. So when Uranus comes through, it can be quite destabilizing, and yet it can actually be just the thing that is necessary to work against that resistance. Now, with Venus and Uranus together, there may be something that's coming through socially or in your life where you recognize that there are patterns of relating and patterns of the need to have this security around a relationship or around finances or around the way that you deal with your possessions or around your values in any sense of the meaning, your own personal sense of value, and also what you value, how you deal with values. And all of those things are going to be questioned and shaken up at this time. So it's not just the 4th of July. We're building up to that in the days before, and we're continuing with that energy for many, many days after, because Venus then shifts into Gemini. And I've done a whole video, by the way, on Uranus in Gemini. She's like a reconnaissance mission for Uranus, as Uranus is going to shift into Gemini only 3 days later. So right after this conjunction, we just move this forward now a couple of hours, Venus conjoins Uranus and then moves into Gemini. And there she is there at the 0 degree point, and it's only a few hours, 3 hours actually, after this conjunction. And so she's kind of like scoping what's going on in the future. It's like I've been taking care of my guest. I've been hosting Uranus all these 7 years. Now I'm going to escort Uranus into Gemini, and we're going to see what's there. So there's a realization of something, Venus with Uranus, just at the very last degree, the last few minutes, the last 8 arc minutes of a degree of Taurus. And that realization is now, okay, what are we going to do about this now? And it's a new model of exchange, a new model of relationships. And this is Venus in Gemini. She's much more playful and cheerful, a little bit more superficial. Venus in Taurus likes stability, predictability, depth, and something more grounded. Venus in Gemini is much more flirty and a little bit more social, more funny. That playfulness can be helpful, and it can actually be a little bit too light to actually find substance. It can be superficial. And all of those qualities are possible. And then when Uranus moves in on Monday, so the 7th of July, Uranus moves in to join Venus, we're going to have more of this theme now in a different way. So what we've realized around this week, the first week of July, is going to, let's say, realize itself externally or in the new iteration when the two planets are finally into Gemini. So again, if you want to have more information about Uranus and Gemini, there's a separate video on that. And I invite you to watch that. That was my latest upload before this one. So this dynamic is, again, an annual thing, except that this year is different in the sense that Venus is is finishing off the journey of Uranus in Taurus, and they will not meet in Taurus ever again. No, well, at least not for 84 years. In most of our lifetimes, we will not see Venus meeting Uranus in Taurus. So that's going to itself, it kind of initiates more change. We're already in a phase, as you know, of major change, but this is accelerating that change, and that change can come through surprising new dynamics in relationships. Surprising new dynamics in finances, surprising new dynamics in the way that you can spend your money, in the way that you can even earn your money. Again, this can be collective and it can be individual. Of course, individually, things tend to be more manageable and a little bit easier to navigate than collectively. So we have to deal with whatever's happening collectively as a consequence of our own self and how we are participating karmically in this particular generation. So it's a little bit different. We have to deal with things that maybe we're not in agreement with at times. So this is coming just hours again before we now then have on the 4th of July again, the next shift, which is another big shift in energy that is a little bit more hard to detect. And that is that Neptune is going to be stationing retrograde. Whoops. So there we go. So Neptune stations retrograde a few hours after Venus moves into Gemini, which remember is just 3 hours after Venus conjoins Uranus at the end of Taurus. So now we have Venus in a sextile or building to a sextile with Saturn and Neptune is extremely slow at this point. It's barely moving through most of June and most of July. Neptune has been hanging at this 2-degree point. And so this may have also caused a certain amount of confusion, even now when it was still direct. Certainly after the 4th, there'll be a lot of questioning around our assumptions, around things that we have desired or things that we wanted to start, things that we wanted to get moving into, the direction that we're taking in life. Where are we going with things? This is very much the Aries energy, this kind of pioneering energy or starting something new, initiating energy. And then Neptune kind of says, I'm not so sure anymore. And this is our role now to start to question, well, where are we going with this? And how is that going to impact us? I just want to check my notes here because I wrote some things here about the Neptune retrograde that tie in also to the Capricorn full moon, which also tie into this notion of a need for certainty around things. And again, remember that I was saying that the need for certainty is not based in grounded reality. It's based in an ego fear. It's based in something that says, I can't cope with what's going on today. I need to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's why many of you are even watching astrology videos. It's not my preferred way of using astrology because I find that it makes us dependent. We become vulnerable when we think that something's going to happen to us and tell me what's going to happen to me. It puts you in the position of a child, really, where, the future is not going to be kind to those who are passive and waiting to be told. So we really should turn this around and listen from the inside, listen through the intuitive understanding, quieten the fear, quieten the mind, and listen to your own guidance about what you should be doing next and how you should be participating out in the world. And that guidance comes from your physical body. So the body and mind are integrated. The intuition is part of your physical nature. And if you're only living in the thoughts and the ideas that you have about a past or future fear or event, then you're not really able to integrate what's actually happening now, and you will never feel solid. Therefore, you look for certainty. So everything will always be positive, it will always be negative, but it's some distant future story that people end up looking at. And this is called fantasy thinking. So you really have to be careful of the fantasy thinking. And that Neptune retrograde helps us deal with where we need a reality check, a little wake-up call, and to recognize actually I'm selling myself short or I'm cutting myself off from my own inner guidance by having this kind of notion that everything's going to be fabulous and it's all going to work out beautifully and so on. We have to become more resilient. I'm going to get comments, I know, in the comment section where people say, no, you have to think positively and you have to. This is about recognizing that we have in this moment everything we need to work through this moment, whatever challenge comes up. And the idea that everything has to be positive sets you up for expectations, which sets you up for disappointment. And that's another Neptune word, disillusionment, disappointment. Why? Because we had a fantasy, we had an idea about something, and now that thing didn't pan out, or it let us down, or we feel betrayed. And that's where Neptune retrograde will start to show the cracks in all of that. The notion of taking responsibility for this moment in time is going to bring you more resilience and say, I can get through this. I can manage. I have the tools that are necessary to move through my life in this moment in time. And when you understand that, you're indifferent to whether you consider things positive or negative. They just are, and you're dealing with it. And so if you can start to shift your perspective, which is also the Neptune retrograde, shifting the perspective on how things are labeled in your mind and how you attach importance to a way of things showing up in a particular way, especially down the line, then you start to realize that actually I'm fine just as I am. Even maybe astrology becomes less interesting to you, or you use it in a way that's more sophisticated and you use it in a way that's less about what's going to tell me what to do next or what's going to happen in my life next, and rather, how can I grow? How can I become more human? How can I become more spiritual in this human experience? So, Neptune, you will have noticed, is also with Saturn at this time. On the 13th of July, Saturn will station retrograde. So that's just 2, 3 days after the full moon. And Saturn is ruling this full moon. So I'll talk about that in a minute as well. And that retrogradation together with Neptune and Saturn is also about reconsidering what is this thing that you want to establish long term. And it's a really helpful stage that we're at, that we're now reconsidering our values. So we've just done that now with Venus and Uranus. We'll continue to do that as Venus moves into Gemini with Uranus, new visions, new ideas, new insights around how we deal with things, how we exchange, how we talk about things, how we think about things. And this is also tying in, by the way, to Mercury being very, very slow at this point in its shadow and building to its retrograde, which happens on the 17th of July. So lots and lots of things integrating here. Mercury is in Leo, where we can have fixed ideas. I know this is true. This is my opinion, therefore it's true. And when Mercury retrogrades in Leo, those get challenged as well. So I'd say this is a huge theme in July and into August, where we're working on how our thinking is setting ourselves up for feeling anxious or feeling confident in the life that we're living right now. Not projecting forward, not regretting certain past events or becoming nostalgic for things that never really were that way, just a romantic way of looking at the past, but recognizing what's true in this moment. And I've got this. I can do this thing. I can manage this. This is the resilience that we can learn if we're really listening from the inside out, trusting the body, trusting the instincts, trusting those intuitive senses without overriding that by our opinions and our wishful thinking. So that Neptune Saturn, as Neptune is the first one to retrograde, there's a reconsideration around things that we're trying to build, we're trying to establish. But Saturn is basically in the same place that it will be when it retrogrades. Saturn is currently at 1 degree 52 arc minutes of Aries. It will retrograde at 1 degree and 56 arc minutes of Aries. So that's not there's not much movement in almost 10 days' time. And basically, we're looking at planets that are stationary. So we've got a slow Mercury, we've got a Saturn, Neptune that are extremely slow, that really feel like if you looked in the sky, they're almost grinding to a halt. And we've got this desire now to question what is going on and is this serving me? Is this working best for me? Now we can apply this socially as well, culturally, politically, but we ideally need to start individually. We need to come to our own place how am I disillusioned with authority figures? This is Neptune Saturn. How am I disillusioned with the structures that we rely on? And that can, of course, be in your own life, especially. Think about that. Or the structures that I have built, is that working for me or not? Um, how am I in integrity? That's Saturn. And this will be also the message of the full moon in Capricorn. So where am I in or out of integrity? Where am I um, expecting integrity where I've been shown again and again and again that I will not find it? So letting go of the, let's say, childish dream that, some great figure will come and rescue you or us or whatever the planet. So notice that where this kind of magical thinking creeps in. And with the Saturn dynamic as well, we have an opportunity to really question what that's grounded by. How is that solidly establishing itself? And do we want to go forward with that? Because what this is doing, these retrograde cycles, is taking us into a future that will then be imprinted from February next year quite solidly in this Aries aspect or this Aries part of your chart. And whatever you've understood at this point that needs to change, you must change it. And whatever you've understood you're disappointed by or disillusioned by or need to restructure, need to let go of, change it, deal with it. And you've got a few months to do that, but you will have more and more insight the more you listen to yourself and really trust that, yes, this is the thing that needs to shift. Saturn itself is so as it's stationing on the 13th, it will go back to 25 degrees and 9 minutes of Pisces, and that will be on the 28th of November. So it stations direct at the end of November. So we're having these outer planets have very long cycles of retrogradation. They're nearly 4 or 5 months long. In the case of Neptune, it's 5 months basically. And so there's a long phase. It's a background phase of change. It's not like Mercury retrograde where we're moving and changing and dynamic in the shifting of the way we manage our everyday life. The phases of these outer planets when they station and when they retrograde are much long, the arc is longer. So we have time, we can deal with these things. So think in terms of how can I build this up over these next 4 months, maybe 5 months, and let things evolve, let things go in this new direction. Um, right. Let's check. I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I've covered everything because there's so much to talk about that sometimes I forget. Yeah, I've said this a million times in different ways in different videos, but especially with Neptune, and it's an opportune moment when Neptune is retrograding, we must always question what we believe. It's very easy to, again, sort of settle on an idea or a vision for something and not question that again. And it's a very important thing to keep testing and building that from a place of I know, that it's coming from a deeper knowing rather than a wishful desire for this to be true. It's the difference between connecting to your higher self, your higher spirit, through a place of knowing and putting your faith in a religious text, which is telling you something to believe that you may not resonate with. So this is the sort of litmus test of that. So also very important, investigate, investigate, investigate. And that doesn't mean to become cynical or skeptical, but a healthy skepticism is really useful. This is the foundation of discernment. Compare it to dogma. Um, let's say, for example, the dogma says only sidereal or true sky astrology is helpful, or whatever the thing is, whatever your dogma is, usually that's based in a lack of understanding of what you're talking about because you haven't fully understood why another thing is happening. So a deepening, a more depth, more breadth of understanding is really the message of our time in the month of July and into August because of these retrogrades, particularly there with Mercury. Adding to the fuel because Mercury is ruling Uranus and Venus when they're in Gemini, and it's ruling Mars and the South Node in Virgo. So the dynamic of what we need to understand, how we need to reflect on what's going on in our life is really coming to the fore right now. Um, I think I've said all of the things that I wanted to say. Yeah, so let's just move along. Have we covered it all? Have we covered it all? Just let me have a look at my wee notes here. Yeah, I think that we've got this wobbly siren going by. I don't know if you're hearing that. Um, I'm in Brussels, in the center of Brussels, and it's quite noisy and quite dirty. Brussels is a dirty city. Coming back is not always easy. Right. One last little note about Venus. As she moves into Gemini on the 4th of July, she is there until the end of July. So we have a month of Venus in Gemini, and then she shifts into Cancer, and the energy will shift a lot in August. So this is a great opportunity through July to use that social dynamic understanding, lots of intellectual or insightful notions of what to change and how to move into it, and then try to find something that feels more deep and established as you go into August. And that's part of the journey, the arc of movement also of the Mercury as it's retrograding. And I'll do more about that in different videos going forward. So let's move on. We're going to go now to the Capricorn full moon. And we're going to have a look at how all this is tying in. So already, as you're watching this, let's say the week before this full moon, Mars is really close to the South Node. It's considered conjunct within 15 degrees of the South Node, and it's definitely conjoining from the 3rd, 4th of July. And now, at the time of the full moon, Mars is very strongly conjoining. It's less than 7 degrees away. So that's a very influential energy. It's something that brings a shock or a trigger, and that can be even through loss or severing or violence or letting go of something, even a new aim, a new goal, a new desire for something. I'll do a separate video on that, which is that interaction is coming up 19, 20, 21 July. So we have some time to get used to this energy of what am I ready to let go of. Now, the interesting thing about this Mars is that it's the exaltation ruler of Capricorn. And therefore, it is the ruler of this full moon by exaltation. And of course, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which is really slow and steady at this point because it's preparing for its retrograde. Um, and by the way, I'm coughing, and I've discovered that it's from the pollution here, and that there's a real issue I have with the air and the dryness and the pollution and the heat that we've submitted ourselves to for the last week. So I don't need remedies. Thank you so much for thinking about me, but don't diagnose people on YouTube. Don't try and understand what's going on in a person's life based on a 5-second interaction. It's not a good idea. When I work with people Ayurvedically, I give them a 6-page form to fill out before I even consider what's going on with them. And then we have an hour-long conversation, and we're still maybe working through why things are happening. So thank you for your thinking about me and for the generosity of spirit, but it's not a good thing to engage in, diagnosing people on YouTube. Right, we're back to Saturn. Saturn is also about that integrity. And again, this integrity around why I do what I do. Notice your motivations around things. This is a very good way of looking at things like diagnosing people on YouTube, or the motivations around how you take responsibility or not for what you're doing. And this is part of the integrity message of this full moon. So the actual date is the 10th of July. And it's about 9:30 Universal Time. I use Universal Time because we're all over the world. You don't have to look at the actual house placements for this unless you live in, for example, the UK or Ireland, for example. But it will shift depending on where you live and, of course, depending on the time. So you do the math. It's about 9:36, almost 9:37 Universal Time. This is BST because it's very frustrating. But whenever I shift charts in AstroGold, they always go from Universal Time back to BST -1. So somebody from AstroGold can please help me figure out why that has to happen. I would rather stick with Universal Time if I could. Right. It sounds like I'm doing a lot of complaining here. I'm trying to, this is housekeeping. We're going to call it housekeeping. It's not complaining. It's trying to establish boundaries in housekeeping. Let's go, we'll give it a good Capricorn spin on this. So notice that Mars, which is at the South Node, but also the exaltation ruler of this full moon, is building up to actually it's separating. The moon is separating from a trine. So it's still in this trine and still solidly within a trine. It's about 5+ degrees. That's a strong indicator for a trine with this new moon, the full moon. So the moon is separating from the trine to Mars. And what's interesting about this is that because Saturn is so slow, there's something that we're a little bit not sure of. We're still working through it. It's not ready to change. We're not really sure about this thing. Neptune makes that even more so. We're really looking for solutions, but we're not necessarily finding them, or we're disappointed and we're just now clear what we don't want, not yet clear what we do want. And the moon itself is out of bounds. So the moon is out of bounds, and what that references is something that is different. There's an unpredictability about a moon out of bounds. There's something that's happening that is outside of the norms. It's outside of the way things are usually done. And so this, in conjunction with the fact that Uranus has only just 3 days before gone into Gemini, now with Venus still, there's something here that is going to give us more insight, new ideas, fresh, new, innovative opportunities, as we realize, as the full moon is always this opposition which brings clarity. The full illumination of the moon is kind of like saying my consciousness is now, illuminating my mind, illuminating my awareness of my thinking, of my emotions, of what I need to, how I need to engage in my day to day. And this is giving us a lot of clarity. I find this is a very insightful full moon. Not without its challenges, for sure, because of that Mars South Node. The other thing is that behavior can be unexpected, behavior can be out of the norm, behavior can be out of bounds. And so this can be, again, globally, something that we might be dealing with. And it can also be in terms of our own interpersonal relationships. Behavior will be different, relationships will be different. This is already the process that Venus conjoining Uranus in the end of Taurus was inviting us to change. And now it's definitely underway. Uranus itself is building up to this very strong sextile to Saturn and Neptune, and a very strong trine to Pluto. And it will be only a few weeks later in August that all three, Uranus, then Saturn and Neptune and Pluto, will be in the first degree of each of their signs and creating this incredible basket of hope, if you like, with the air and fire signs. So very, very strong now, as we've moved from the earth sign influence of Taurus to the air sign influence now of Uranus in Gemini. So another very important dynamic. So yeah, so these are times of insight, times of awareness. The full moon is always bringing awareness. It brings things to a culmination. I'm realizing this about the area of my life where we find Capricorn. Where am I in or out of integrity in the area of my life that is governed by Saturn in the sign of Capricorn? So there's a lot here that we can play with in the month of July that has to do with our role in our own life, in our own patterns. It can also be with reference to things like anger and how we're using anger. You know, anger is also a good signal for understanding where we've set up expectations, where we're trying to control outcomes. If we only have one idea of an outcome and the expectation is this is the right or the only outcome, then we get angry when that outcome is not emerging, and we get angry either at ourselves or we get angry at the circumstances or people around us. What we need to absorb at this time can be super helpful right now psychologically to recognize where is the anger. We're all carrying anger, and that's a very important realization anyway, to understand that anger is a channel for change. It's a channel for something to move, and this is the time that we're in that requires change. Mars is the ruler of Saturn and Neptune at this time in Aries. it's a very important dynamic around this full moon, because since Mars is the exaltation ruler of Capricorn, and then it's ruling Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, Mars does a lot of it has a strong impact at this time. And that impact can be through the realization or the letting go of something, of a pattern of behavior. It's ruled by Mercury, and Mercury itself is in this slowing down phase where it's questioning patterns of belief and intransigence around what I think is true, what I think is, what is my opinion, what I think is the right answer, the right way to act. Now, Mercury in Leo ideally is also acting from a place of integrity. Leo and Capricorn are the two signs that really emphasize integrity. Where are we in or out of our integrity? Where are we in or out of our awareness of how we participate in the dynamic around what is going on around us? I've read a lot lately in different social media posts and comments and YouTube videos around people who are saying things like, I can't wait for this division of humanity, one apparently going higher, better, superior, the other dross will stay in their corner, because I can't stand to be around these people. So, well, that's actually not a really evolved way of looking at things. If you believe that the problem is outside of you, you're still living in this fantasy thinking, and that's where you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and more frustration, more anger, and not seeing results, because the change has to come from within you. This is certainly the dynamic of the very, very beginning of Aries, the dynamic of how do I take action? How do I take responsibility? How do I establish something? And is it based on my highest intuition, my highest spiritual guidance, or is it based on fantasy thinking? Is it based on an illusion or a delusion around something? So we're tying a lot in here in July that is actually not so frivolous. It's not sort of the beachy, sunny, fun kind of July energy that many people hope for after a long winter and spring. It's a time for us to really think deeply. We do also have the support of Jupiter, which just now at the Capricorn full moon is finally out of the beams. So the beams means that it's too close to the sun. The beams or the rays of the sun can block out the light of the other planets. And there's a quality where when the planets are recharging, as Jupiter and the sun did in the second week of June, coming together, recharging, the dynamic around, re-energizing is very positive. But then the planet, in this case Jupiter, hasn't got a chance to really fully expose or shine, reveal itself, because the sun is too close. So we're not seeing it. Now we're seeing it. So around the time of this Capricorn full moon, just hours before, Jupiter becomes visible, and we can see it then in the sky. In this case, we'll be seeing it from now for many months to come in the sky. When Jupiter is visible, we get better results. We have Venus visible as well. We get better results because Venus was also under the beams for much of June and even May. So we weren't getting the ease or the results that we'd hoped for. Now we have this possibility. Jupiter, especially in its exaltation, is using its wisdom to the best for everyone's good, for cultivation of life. It's pro-life itself. That's not a political statement. It's positive support of life, positive in the sense of what can we do together to bring the best out of this situation. So I think we're heading into something where if we really live in tune with ourselves, with our deeper understanding and our deeper wisdom, we can shift ourselves and therefore energetically shift our communities and the people around us into something that is much, much more supportive, more loving, more caring. That's where the North Node is asking us to go. The North Node in Pisces, ruled by this Jupiter, is asking us to go to this place of higher awareness. An awareness, and higher, I don't mean that in the sense of a hierarchical awareness. It's about a vaster awareness, the awareness of our unity. This is the unity consciousness that Pisces represents. So a huge opportunity with this full moon to become aware, perhaps through difficulty, perhaps through loss, perhaps through events that may be challenging, especially with the Mars South Node, we can expect sometimes deliberately provoked shocks or events that are designed to make us afraid, designed to make us fear, designed to separate us. Be careful of that. Be careful of reaching conclusions. Be careful of thinking that you already know why this happened, who did it. This is the month of July. This is a great litmus test for many, many generations to come. Can we really, truly come back to ourselves and use this energy of the Pluto-Uranus trine and the sextile from Neptune, Saturn to both Pluto and Uranus in this new way of seeing how we fit in to our life, how we fit into this universe, and not be a spectator to it, and not be the child waiting for Santa Claus to come. So if we think about that over the months to come, especially July and August, I think we're really headed into a vision for life that can feel extremely in alignment with who we are and what we want out of life. For some of you, that Venus Uranus dynamic will shock you in or out of relationships. A relationship can really suddenly end. For example, a job can suddenly end. These are all the dynamics. It depends on your natal chart, but have that sense that okay, whatever this is, this change is helping me grow. It's helping me see myself in a different way. And you might be realizing I actually didn't need that thing any longer. And therefore, this is clearing a space for me to move into the next thing. So look at everything through the lens of how can I learn from this? This is something I admire so much of Nelson Mandela, who said, I never fail. I either succeed or I learn. That's all you need to know. And so if you think about that over the course of July and into August, it will set up the whole vision that we have for this big shift that we're all going through, 2025 and 2026, in a way that can actually bring us some fantastic results, especially individually. And results don't necessarily show up materially. So, those of you who are waiting for a job, waiting for a windfall, waiting for Santa Claus, whatever, to bring the thing, waiting for the knight in shining armor, you will be disappointed. So you have to take action. This is again about this notion of integrity. The Capricorn moon is about what can I do, what's necessary to do. It doesn't get very emotional about things. It's organized. I'm doing the right thing. This is the thing I need to be doing. So it's a good opportunity also to recognize where is my emotionality getting in the way of me behaving in a way that's constructive. And that's not to say emotions are bad, it's to say that they can interfere with our capacity to think clearly. And that's part of the dynamic of discerning what is a healthy, supportive way of expressing my emotion and what is an unhealthy way of expressing emotion. And I think this is also the Mars South Node dynamic that we will see, where anger and aggression and things like that can really be shown and tested in our personal lives or in our collective. Right, let's have a look then, sign by sign, at what is coming up for everybody. And we're going to move through this now, starting with Aries. Whoops, we're going to have to do a little bit of fiddling with the time to get Aries. So you notice that the signs don't align because not all constellations are 30 degrees, but we use a template that has 30 degrees. Oh, I've been going the wrong direction. Hang on, now we have to go. Boom, there we go. So the template is 12 times 30 degrees to create a wheel of 360. But of course, the constellations have different sizes. Some are small, some are big. And so that's why it doesn't happen in a regular way as I move through the ascendants. So this is for Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. You'll see in the description box below why I think it's helpful to look at all three. And if you're an Aries, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, there's a really big change happening for you at this time because this full moon is happening in your 10th house of career. at the same time that Saturn is very, very slow, ready to station in your first house of self. Neptune has already stationed retrograde. And so you might be questioning, what am I doing? What am I doing with my work? How am I showing up in my everyday life? Your ruler is in the sixth house, and that is all about your work, or your sixth house also represents your day to day, what you do every day, how you structure it, how you engage day to day. Something here is going to change. There's no doubt. Or needs to change. Let's say something about your day to day needs to change. This might be something that's not supportive of your health, that you're recognizing I need to change this based on why I don't feel so well or why my health is failing me because of what I am doing all the time. And it might be just that you're realizing that this is no longer in alignment with what I need to do. Equally, in some cases, you can lose your job. This can be it. It's like, oops, yeah, sorry, moving on. And that the Uranus and Venus, which is in a sextile to Neptune, Saturn, and in a trine to Pluto, is showing you that there are new aims and goals that you're ready to establish. There's new things that you're ready to move into, new ways even of earning a living. And this has been a process that you may have been not sure how to establish, or you may have been ignoring. You may have felt like there's a little insecurity around how to do this. But as you move into the second half of 2025 and the first half of 2026, you're going to start to feel more security, a bigger sense of what to do around your foundation, how you feel secure, what you need emotionally or psychologically or even materially to feel secure, and what are you going to do about it? How are you going to show up in life? So it's actually a very favorable time if you really feel like it's time to go, or if you have been let go, or there's even a threat of being let go in terms of your employment. This is fine. Just let it go and recognize that this is a pattern that needed to be disrupted, that you are now moving in a new direction. This can also be something to do with parents. There may be some realization around your responsibility with parents. Or your responsibility becoming a parent. We've got Mercury, which symbolizes children in the fifth house, Jupiter, which symbolizes pregnancy and early little babies, and parenting itself in your fourth house. And your exalted ruler, the sun, is with that in the fourth house. So there's a lot going on around home and maybe family as well, something to do with your children. Maybe this dynamic has much to do also about that dynamic around my day to day is changing because of children, or because of a pregnancy, or because the children are leaving. All of these are possible. Equally, because Venus and Uranus are in the third house, all about your learning curve and what you might need to know as a skill to do what you need to do. This is also where you have this opportunity or a new desire or insights into what new training you need to do, or what do I need to learn, or what do I need to teach as well. There may be something that you're ready to express at this time. Either way, it has a lot to do with your social status, how you show up in your world, how you show up out the front door. That might be through a career or a vocation, or it might just be also in your social status. And again, if you are one of these people whose relationship has been disrupted, maybe based on values, maybe issues around money disrupted the relationship. Maybe it was just time. Things have just expired and it's time to move on. Then this again will put you in a place where you need to learn how to engage socially again, learn to connect with people in a new way, connecting with friends. It's a brilliant opportunity, especially with Venus there in the third house, to be meeting new people in your local space, meeting new people through courses, meeting new people through things that you share in terms of skills and how you want to reach into your neighborhood and maybe start a garden or something like that, or some community service, especially with Pluto in your 11th house. So a very dynamic time. Your ruler is in the sixth house. It's working hard and it's ready for some kind of big change. And this is what's coming in the second half of July. Some big realization. It's time to move on in this new way. That can be something related to a surprise that you didn't see coming, or that you knew had to happen but didn't know how to get out of the situation. So this will give you the exit. Really reflect on your role. Reflect on your sense of responsibility and any disillusionment that you might have, or any sense that you're not capable, any sense that you feel you don't have the equipment. really check that, because that is, again, looking for certainty. Being certain of a negative opinion is no less destructive, self-destructive than being certain of a positive opinion and not actually taking responsibility for either. So this is your opportunity, Aries, and I hope it's a great new start for you in your career, a new realization around how you want to move forward, or what you realize needs to change in the way that you show up in this world. Very, very personal to you, Aries. Good luck with that. Taurus, you've just had Uranus moving through your first house of self, and so you have changed dramatically around issues of your self-worth and how you are stepping out into the world. And now there's a lot around your finances, around money, around your family. Whatever supports you is the second house, whatever supports you physically, because yourself is the first house. And the second house can also represent things like what you eat, your day-to-day intake of things. Is this working for me? The second house is also how you verbalize things, how you communicate things. And this can be an opportunity for you to realize that this is what I need to say, especially as Jupiter is in the third house and you're thinking from a much higher level, or you're thinking from a place of what is good for all. So there's a real nice tie-in there. Your ruler, Venus in the second house, is always very conducive to really focusing in on what's positive around what makes you feel supported, but also what you feel is important in terms of your possessions, your values, your can be income if you're employed. It can be the house of income as well. How you manage money and possessions is very much in the second house. And as regards family, it seems to be extremely important at this time, because Mercury is in your house of the lineage and family, and you've got Saturn and Neptune in your 12th house of the ancestral space. So Mercury in the fourth is your lineage and the ancestors that you know, and the 12th house is ancestral things that might be not so clear to you, patterns that might be hidden, behavioral patterns that have been never questioned and have been handed down. So it's an opportunity. Listen to the introduction around the opportunity to reflect on your belief system and what you have faith in, and why you have faith in that. It's a really great opportunity. So this full moon itself is in your ninth house of your higher vision for your life. Why am I here? What do I do with myself? What is my purpose? The moon is your exaltation ruler, so it's always interesting to know what the moon is doing. This is trinal to you, so quite supportive, but the moon herself is in detriment. So she's not very emotive, let's say, in a very pragmatic sign like Capricorn, difficult to really empathize, difficult to feel solidly what emotions are there. And with the moon in the ninth house, there can be this vision for something positive, something better. Let's grow, let's develop. And that's really supported by Jupiter being in the third. You're ready to expand into something new. Even if it's more practical than emotional, this can actually be extremely helpful, because then you're not dealing from the place of emotions, but something that really is just very clear. I need to get this done. Your ruler is now in Gemini, which is more cerebral. It's more of this sense of what's necessary. How do we deal with this thing right away, as opposed to getting stuck in the quagmire of it. So this can be very conducive for you to make changes. Mars also is with the South Node in your fifth house. So there's something about your self-expression, or about the thing that you want to create, or about relations with your children that are also changing quite dramatically. There may be something that happens in a way that's quite surprising. Mars comes around every 2 years to meet the South Node, but it's not in this sign every 2 years. And so this is new. This is a very novel thing. We haven't had this for about, I don't know, 9 years or something. It's a long time. This might have something to do with children. It might have something to do with the way you relate to your children, and therefore it's necessary to shapeshift, change the dynamic around that. Mars also rules your relationship sector anyway, in general. So this might be about partnerships, especially your life partner. Is there something about a lover, or about the way that you love that needs to change, or that is being changed? Are you being separated by forces that are not necessarily in your control, but by circumstances? Is there something that's coming through that you're recognizing needs to change, and can involve your goals, your longer term vision for what you're here to do, which is changing? Certainly the way you show up in life has been changing a lot with that Pluto in the 10th. We've talked about that many, many times in other videos, so I won't go back over that. But also the Saturn Neptune in the 12th, it's really having you question your role in maybe what we could describe as self-sabotage. Chiron is also there. I didn't put Chiron in just to simplify the chart, but looking at all of these things, how am I potentially sabotaging my own happiness or my own success in my life? And especially with Mars in the fifth, this is a great opportunity to set yourself up for new ways of showing up. And that can also be quite physical because with Venus, your ruler in the second, Uranus in the second, again, it's with reference to what I do for my body. Do I exercise enough? Do I, Venus rules your sixth house as well, your regular habits. Do I take care of myself? Do I eat well? Am I working through my physical body, which is very important for Taurus? And Mars, of course, in the fifth can be very much tied to athleticism or dancing or moving your body in some way. And that can be one way forward that you realize, okay, I got to get off the couch, got to do this new thing. And that will shift your mind. It will shift the quality of engagement out in the world, and it will shift your vision for what you're here for. So any of those things are possible, difficult to say with any certainty without seeing your natal chart. So do schedule an appointment if you want to know more. All right, Taurus, good luck with that. Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Of course, this is a big time for you because now you've got both Venus and Uranus in your first house for the first time. Your ruler is in the third house where it's quite comfortable. And so Mercury is not only ruling your first house, but also rules your house of home and family and your foundation in life. And that's where we find Mars with the South Node. So there's a lot of shifting, a lot of change. You personally showing up in a new way. The first house is yourself. So how do I engage with the world? How do I reach out into my life? How do I connect with people? So Venus, especially in the first house, maybe I realize now there's a new way I need to show up. I need to engage with different people or in a different way. And this might be part of the dynamic of Saturn, Neptune in your social house. The 11th house is where you socialize. It's your networks and your friends and acquaintances. It's how the world stage is reflecting back to you, how you are out in the world. And Venus is the exaltation ruler also of your 10th house and that North Node, which is taking you in new directions socially, overall, out in the world. What are my aims and ambitions out in the world or with my career, with my marriage, for example? And so there's a lot here that says, I want to be different. I want to show up, or I need to be different. I have to show up in this new way. Pluto, of course, for 2 years already, more than 2 years, has been showing you how you are in your life and what it is that you're here for. And that's changing profoundly with Pluto in the ninth. New beliefs, new visions for things. Pluto retrograde, especially as Neptune and Saturn will be retrograding, is a great opportunity to question dogma, question beliefs, question ideas and opinions. And the third house is a fixed sign. So where you have your opinions and the way that you say things, Gemini, can make you quite strong. The usual idea of Gemini is that they don't really know, but actually Geminis are quite opinionated. They can just be really funny about it. So it doesn't make people feel so threatened. But here we've got Mercury really slow. It's really stationing very soon after to retrograde. And that retrogradation is with your ruler in retrograde, which it is frequently, so not new for you, but it's another opportunity to question assumptions around my needs, around who I am, how I reach out in the world. Is this the future I want for myself? Are these the people I want to hang out with? Second house is where Jupiter is now, and it's really bright now. We can see Jupiter again in the sky. So it's going to start to bring you the better results, which can be potentially financial, or it can be something around your values and your possessions. Your own self-worth, which can get a great boost with Venus in the first as well as Jupiter in the second. But at the same time, Jupiter rules your relationship house. So maybe you're finding now that there's a better dynamic around support for you. The full moon itself is in the eighth house. So you're realizing where intimacy is needing to either change in some way, or you need to develop it more, or you need less intimacy and more of an independence. This will be, of course, different depending on your nature, your age, etc. But there's something here about what you share with others. It's psychological, emotional, and sexual intimacy in the eighth house, but also what you have received from your family, patterns that you've received from your family. And this where Mars and the South Node are, it can show you something about what you've inherited through your lineage, through your early childhood. You've got Mercury in the third as well, and then Mars in the fourth, where you're recognizing dynamics that need to change. I need to show up differently based on what I'm understanding. The moon is in the house of crisis. So you might be realizing this is actually something that is now coming to a head, and I need to deal with this. And especially with Mars approaching the South Node, there may be something in the balance for you that you're realizing, well, I could lose this if I don't do this thing. Or if they don't do this thing, they'll lose me. Whichever end of the spectrum you're on there's going to be a bigger shift in terms of that dynamic. But it's all quite supported with that Jupiter in the second house of what supports you. So look forward to big change, especially over the next 7 years, and let us know how you're doing in the comments. Bye for now. Cancer, this is your full moon in the opposite sign of you, and this is all about relationships and the dynamics that you have in relationships. So the sun is in your sign, the moon is in the opposite sign of the other. And this is at the time where you have Jupiter in your sign. So there's something you're realizing about relationships or that your way of engaging out in the world that you're needing to take responsibility for, that you're ready to find more clarity around, and especially as it's ruled by Saturn, to find the boundaries that are necessary for you so that when you show up in the world, then you're having this sense of this is what I need to feel myself, to feel secure, to feel in a good place about what's going on. Saturn and Neptune at the top of your chart, now Saturn ruling that full moon, is communicating something about your career or your vocation, your marital status, because Saturn rules the house of marriage, or your career advancement, the career goals and the ways that you organize yourself professionally. All of this is changing. It will be on the 13th that Saturn will station retrograde, but it's already very, very slow. It's basically at the same degree that it will station retrograde within 1 arc minute of a degree at this point at the full moon. So we're looking at something that's already in process, but that you're realizing at the time of the full moon, which is actually on the 10th of July. But I've just been moving the clock face forward, so it appears as the 11th, but it's the 10th of July, universal time. So the full moon is your realization around either your desire for a relationship or your need to engage in a different way, the dynamics that you have around clients, even because the seventh house is your business partners, or it's your clients, or it's the way that you engage professionally with people as well. And there's a lot of awareness around that as well. Mars is in the third house of your short-term goals and your aims and the things that you need to get done. There's a lot that's going on, especially as Mercury's in your second. It's also preparing to retrograde just a few days later, so it's also moving very, very slowly. And Mars is with the South Node, so there's something about your third house activity, obligations, something that might come through how you're communicating or words that you're either speaking or hearing that is going to shift the way things are done in terms of your creative expression or how you're reaching into what makes you happy, what makes you expressed, or in terms of your actual day-to-day work and the way that you're showing up. So a great opportunity to question how my everyday, busyness, let's say, is affecting or impacting my career. Am I doing the right thing? That's very Mars in Virgo. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? So sometimes it's more about working smart rather than working more. And like just as an example, I'm a Cancer moon and rising, and this past week we've had a heat wave, and it's just been so hard to do work. My mind is fried, and it's really, really hard to work when it's 31 degrees in the room that you're working in. And so I had to let go of certain ideas around how much I could accomplish. I just had to let it go, and I had to come to a place of really deep prioritizing. And so that's also the Mars approaching the South Node, letting go of goals, letting go of things that you thought you needed to do, or things that, needed to get done, need more of your attention, more of your priority time. And as Jupiter is in your first house, ruling the sixth house of your everyday, your work and your day-to-day schedule, you're well equipped to get more done now. You're well equipped to actually achieve more, but it's about being more strategic. Mars is always about strategy of some kind. And this might be something that comes to your realization, even around the dynamic of who you connect with and how they may or may not be supportive, or how that engagement needs to change in terms of the dynamic of how you are with people, or how people are with you, that you're realizing, wait a minute, I don't need more of that. So let that one go as well. Venus has moved from your 11th house to the 12th house, along with Uranus. Uranus has been in your 11th house, changing your way of connecting globally with people, or online, or with any kind of social or networking type of engagement, changing your vision for your future, which is, this process is ongoing. You can watch a whole video about that separately on my channel. And now with Uranus and Venus in the 12th house, maybe more of your attention is inward. It's much more a part of this phase of your evolution, especially for Cancer rising, but it's anyway applying to the moon and sun. And that evolution is inward. It's coming through you, from you. It doesn't mean you curl up and don't do anything, unfortunately, because I know as Cancers, we generally like to do that. But it's actually where there's much more coming through the intuition, coming through the unconscious, coming through the innovation and the flashes of insight that can be deeply spiritual, that end up then being able to contribute something to others, to the world at large, or to your clients, or to your family and your loved ones. It's a brilliant time to really sit down, be quiet, and listen. And with Mars in the third, that's not so easy because there's less and less energy for sitting down, being quiet. There's a lot of energy for being busy. So we have to carve that out, make sure that you plan for that. And of course, this can also represent something that comes from far away, what's coming from abroad, what information or people or clients or something is coming from distant shores, or people who are from other countries, or you having to travel. Venus is the exaltation ruler of your ninth house, where we have the North Node. And so there's a lot of travel happening, and that's also Mars in the third house. Lots of busyness around travel, going here and there, communicating in different ways. But also with the the Venus exaltation rulership of the ninth, there's something that you're traveling for a really important purpose, and that might be ancestral, and it might be spiritual, or it might be just to become aware of your own gifts, your own capacities as you go forward in this month of July. So I think we've said that all there, Cancer. It's a nice energy. If we can get over that hump of the Mars, I'll do a separate video about that. But getting in touch with your feelings, your emotions, your hidden motivations, the unconscious aspect of self is extremely important. Really try and understand how things relate to childhood. Venus also rules your fourth house of your lineage, your home, family of origin, and of course the 11th house of your vision for the future and your friends and so on. So there's something here you can learn a lot about, and then transform into change for yourself. And then Venus will be in Cancer for the month of August, basically. So an opportunity to digest all of that and then take it out into your relationships dynamically. Good luck, Cancer. See you in the next video. So Leo, this moon is happening in your sixth house of everyday work, your habits, and the things that you're responsible for. This is part of what gives Leo its integrity, is that Saturn rules your sixth house. You show up. If somebody says what to do, you show up. You're going to do it. Whether that comes from a place of insecurity or confidence is up to the actual Leo concerned. But having Capricorn on the sixth house gives Leo great integrity. So this is part of the dynamic right now. Where am I in or out of integrity? What needs to change? Is this working for me based on my vision for myself? Maybe I've got this new vision, but I've got to question that now. Or I've got a new philosophy of life and I've got to look at that. Or the way that that I was raised, the spirit or the religious tradition that I was raised in, or the political tradition I was raised in, I'm questioning now. And this is part of the dynamic of the next few months with these retrogrades. your ruler, the sun, is in the 12th house. So often this can be a period of deep introspection anyway. When the ruler is in the 12th house, our mind it tends to be a little bit more interiorized. So we're not necessarily feeling extroverted or really reaching out. A lot of Leos are not extroverted either, and that's part of why so many Leos struggle, because they think their archetype is to be extroverted, but actually their archetype is just to radiate. It's just to be radiant. It's to be, to have that effulgence that comes from this beautiful sun that says, I'm just doing my thing. So this can be an opportunity for you to make peace with that, the need to interiorize more of your life and to lower expectations around what other people seem to want from you. Pluto is in your 7th for a very long time already, so you've been looking at relationships in a different way, and this is part of the bigger shift. And now with Uranus out of your 10th house, there may be more of a feeling of, okay, this is the future I want. This is the vision that I'm holding now. These are the people I want to be with. This is a longer term change, but we're only going to get that Uranus for 4 months here. But it's helpful that Venus is there escorting Uranus into your house of relationships. So it can be that you're meeting new people in a really supportive way, in a way that brings a lot of dynamism around your vision for your future. A good time to connect with people based on ideas, based on the things that you really enjoy, based on things that are different as well, because Uranus is about really more engaging in a vision, a visionary way of looking at things. So you might actually connect with people who are very quirky. You'll see that in the video that I did about Uranus. You'll see more about that. But this is a great opportunity right off the bat in July, which will no doubt correspond to many of your birthdays, by the way. So once you get around the 20th, 21st of July, then it becomes I guess the 21st to the 22nd of July, then it becomes Leo season, and you're still going to have this Venus and Uranus in your 11th house. So you can have a really interesting time meeting new people, reconnecting with people in different ways. So you have also in your sign Mercury, which is preparing to station retrograde. I'll do a separate video about that, but that's showing that you need to really deeply reflect on this vision that you have for your future, the vision that you have for your maybe ways of earning money, because that's the money house, the 11th house, and also the second house, which is another money house. Your possessions, your income, the way that you make money, but also how you deal with your values and what you think is valuable is all very strongly on your mind at this time. And you're reconsidering a lot of that, maybe reconsidering how you deal with all of that. And certainly with Mars in the second, there is something that's going to shift that can be quite surprising. There can be loss, even potentially around family in some way, a letting go of maybe a letting go of an expectation that there would be support coming from family, for example, or that there's some kind of a dynamic around the way that you are working with money, spending money. There may be financial loss that's potential. It will depend on your natal chart. That's not guaranteed, but that's one way that this can be read with Mars on the South Node in the second house. You have to be careful of how you invest, what you're investing in. You might also realize it's time to cut your losses, and this might be something to do with your property or things that you own or money that you're earning, and you might be ready for a bigger change. Now it's time to move on based on this new sense of what I'm here for, or this revision of what you're here for, which is part of a longer process that you're in. Mars rules your 4th house, that is property, home, family, your lineage. Connecting also with your mom, with your mother, particularly. Usually it's the mother I find in the 4th house, the father or the parents together in the 10th house, and certainly the social influence there too. Father takes the 9th house. And so we're looking at something that might involve something to do with your bond around your parents or sibling. Because the 3rd house is ruled by Venus, Venus in the 11th. If you have an older sister, perhaps there's something there. It can be a cousin or an aunt or something like that. Cousins, siblings, aunts, the extended family. But with Mars on the South Node in the 2nd house, at the very least, we could say you're ready to change your values around something, your goals around money, your goals around what you feel is valuable to you now, or what you felt was important is no longer. There's something there. It's either being taken away or you're deciding to move away. So either way, it's working towards something that is very different. So please listen to the introduction because it's time. It's all time. So this has something to do with how you spend your everyday life. Maybe you're realizing that you're just sacrificing way too much of life for a job. And then maybe you are one of these people who gets these letters that say, at any time you could be fired. So it's like, why would I invest more of my time and energy in something that is so precarious? So this can also bring you new ideas around work, and how you want to work. Right. So Leo, big change, big change for you. And in many ways, the pressure is off, especially for Leo rising, from the Uranus out of the 10th for now. It'll go back in the 10th house in November until April next year. But for the moment, it feels more free, more light, and more future oriented. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Good luck, Leo. Virgo, this is a big moment for you because now you have Uranus moving into your 10th house. The full moon of this moment is showing up in your 5th house of how you express yourself. So that will be very different because you not only have the South Node in your house of self saying, I got to be different, something's got to change, something's got to give here. With Mars, this energy of real sudden and perhaps unexpected change, a dynamic around what you're ready to get rid of, what you're ready to take action on and let go of. With the Uranus at the 10th, in the 10th, there can be some really big change, a sudden change of marital status, for example, in or out, and there can be a sudden change of work status. It does seem very positive in some sense that the Jupiter in the 11th house seems to offer protection. Jupiter is in its joy in the 11th. And it's in its exaltation. So really a fantastic opportunity to receive help from people. And that can be direct financial help, or it can be support. Like, you got to talk to this person and they can help you out. They can show you the way. They can, guide you this way, that way. If you work with an audience, for example, this can be very helpful because Jupiter rules your 7th house of relationships or clients or the people that relate to you. The North Node is there at the moment, and Jupiter is pulling a lot of attention into the 11th house. So lots of eyes on Virgo at the moment, lots of opportunities for accolades, for receiving some kind of acknowledgement of what you do from others, and feeling better in general because Jupiter also rules your 4th house of home, and the moon in the 5th house is showing you what you need to feel more joy in your life. Maybe that feeling of, okay, actually, I got this and I see where I'm going with this. As always, Virgo, really, really important to check your attitude. Mars rules your 3rd house. This can be part of this dynamic at the moment. It's the exaltation ruler of your moon, which is reflecting the mind. And there is, this potential for pessimism. Again, depends on your natal chart. The potential for pessimism is there with Scorpio ruling the 3rd, or Scorpio on the 3rd and Mars ruling that. And your ruler is in the 12th. So it's also slow and stationing retrograde just a few days later. And so you're going to have opportunities to reconsider your unconscious process, what's going on in your inner motivations, let's say unconscious motivations or inherited patterns, because also we have Neptune with Saturn within a couple of days to be retrograde as well, which are in your 8th house. And that's where you find your patterns of whatever you received from your family, including direct inheritance, but it can also be what you've inherited in terms of trauma or psychological situations or issues to do with, family crises and suffering or loss. So you're maybe becoming aware of that, especially as Saturn rules this moon in the 5th house, but it's in contrast to where you see your future. So there seems to be this awareness that if I want to go here, this has to change, or this has to be dealt with, for example. We see, for example, that Pluto is in your 6th house. It's been there for a long time. So already for over 2 years that your day-to-day life is changing. that it will change with or without you, and that's something that you can respond to in a very dynamic way. Now, with Uranus in the 10th, you can just kind of wake up one day and think, geez, this is the thing I need to do. This is my true passion. This is who I am. This is how I want to be. As I mentioned in the previous video that I posted only about Uranus, this can also be even around your sexual identity, your way of identifying within the context of your relationships in general, or your professional identity. It doesn't have to be around sexual identity. It's just that Mercury represents it's not only the psychopomp, but it's also or the Neshwara, which is this gender fluid dynamic. So often Gemini is associated with homosexuality, bisexuality, and so on. So this might be your opportunity where you think, you know what? This is actually who I am, and I'm okay with that now. I can really reach into the world like this now. And that will be certainly not without its challenges for some, but it can be part of the bigger story. And if that's not about your gender, it can also be about what you do, like your career. And your parents thought you should be a dentist and you want to be, I don't know, Cirque du Soleil performer or something like that. Right. So I'm starting to ramble now. This is time to move on. Okay, Virgo, make the most of this. I'll see you in the next video. So Libra, this is very dynamic because you've got a lot of activity in the angular houses of your chart. The moon is in your fourth house, which represents your home, what's going on at home and how that is feeling to you. There may be some need for change, or there's a sense of something has to move in terms of home. Maybe there's an awareness around the family itself or around your children, especially as Pluto's in the fifth. There's maybe an awareness around something that you're needing to change or invest more of in terms of your inner experience of life. Feel more grounded, feel more secure, feel more solid emotionally. It doesn't look too unhelpful in the sense that we've got Jupiter at the top of your chart. Angular planets really give you a lot of support. They give you a lot of opportunities for reaching into the thing that you're working towards. And Venus also is in a very hopeful house, the ninth house, a very lucky house. And she's with Uranus. So something's changing in terms of your vision, your sense of what you want to be happy, how you want to express that happiness, how you want to express yourself. Venus is your ruler, so really important here what she's doing. This can also be about a new vision that you have for why you're here in general, but also for what you want to do in terms of learning, exploring the world, traveling. You might decide actually you want to become a teacher rather than learn. You're teaching something. That also could be very, very good. But either way, you're in a place that's really conducive with your ruler up in the ninth. It's really conducive time for opening the mind, broadening the mind to new thoughts and ideas and new inspirations around what your purpose is, why you're here, coming from a place of a deeper sense of yourself. This is also helped by having the South Node in your 12th, which actually is an extremely spiritual placement because you're in a place where you're quite ready to let go of things at this stage. Especially with Mars there on the South Node, you could be quite ready to let go of really bad patterns of behavior, things that don't support your well-being, physical or mental. Patterns that you're recognizing you're ready to name them as an addiction, for example, or you're ready to name them as something that's just dysfunctional and not supporting you. And with the moon in the fourth, you're realizing this and you're feeling it, let's say. You're sensing that from a visceral place. And it's showing up in terms of how you connect, how you bond emotionally or psychologically with your people, the people around you. This might be something to do with a new home, quite literally, as well. But it's most likely to be something relational as the ruler of your fourth is in your seventh house with Neptune and it's preparing to retrograde. So it's very, very slow at this point. It's really in a dynamic of let's not do much right now. Let's reflect on these things and see where it takes us. So I would say specifically, especially because of these 12th house and fourth house dynamics, And the fact that Jupiter is in the 10th, giving you a kind of a more dignified or higher perspective on your social role, or maybe the dynamic around your parents or your role as a parent, it's a good time to really slow down and not think so much, but rather intuit. Jupiter rules your third house. Um, so you do tend to take the high road in terms of thinking and in terms of your way of communicating. But at the same time, it might be that you are now more ready to listen than talk. And this would be a really good way of understanding this moment in time, especially as Mercury, ruling the 12th, ruling the ninth, is preparing to retrograde in the 11th house of your social connections and also your vision for the future. So a lot of bigger changes, but I think the way through that is to try and understand, how can I trust the universe? How can I listen and trust the universe? And Mars on the South Node might give you the pretext to let go where there was a little fear around letting go, in some way. This might have something to do with income and letting go of an asset that might also involve a home or property, but that becomes something that resolves later on another problem. So, right, I'll leave it there. I need to see your chart to know more, but good luck with this. I'll see you in the next video. So for Scorpio, sun, moon, and ascendant, the full moon is happening in your third house of your everyday life. Your siblings, your neighbors, your friends, the people you have coffee with, the people you go walking the dog with. And the third house is your aims and goals. This is why Scorpio is so intense, because they're like a dog with a bone. They will not drop it because they've got Saturn ruling the third house where Capricorn is. This is all part of my beginner's course to learn all of these basic things and to realize the significance of these signs. And of course, Mars is your ruler, and Mars is up there with the South Node in the 11th house. So there seems to be something you're aware of now about your everyday life or about your goals, about the things, the way that your everyday life is panning out, or the things that you need to do as obligations, particularly with Saturn, Neptune in the 6th house of obligations and chores and your day-to-day work and all the schedule, the way you organize your time and work and so on. This Mars South Node can really have you thinking, I don't want this anymore. This is not the vision I had for my life. I want to change it. Or I want to let go of this dream or this goal. It's no longer that. This will depend on your natal chart, but it seems very strongly linked to the older vision that you had for your future, and also potentially for the friends in your life that you might realize, no, there's something new that's coming in here. Something needs to change in the dynamic around friends, in the dynamic around my social circle, my network, my casual acquaintances, but also especially around money, because that also reflects the 11th house, reflects the house of gains from your career, especially if you are working for yourself, running your own business, for example, or you're independent, working for yourself. Less so if you are employed. So that's more the second house of what you receive through your work in terms of your income, steady income. Jupiter's in a really good place. The sun itself is in its house of exaltation, or rather its house of its joy, while Jupiter is in the sign of its exaltation. So a really nice combination for Scorpio, and Jupiter rules that money house, the second house, and it also rules the I know more Pisces. It rules your fifth house of love, where the North Node is, and it's telling you something about finding more joy or purpose in your work, especially with that Saturn Neptune in retrograde. It really feels like you've kind of come to a wall. You've hit a wall, and it's like this job, this attitude, this day-to-day habit, this day-to-day ho-hum thing. It's done. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And especially with the moon in the third, you're becoming keenly aware of how you use your time, what your goals are, how you interact with people, how your dynamic of exchanging ideas or connections with people of all kinds is working or not for you. Uranus is with Venus in the 8th house, There can be a really strong dynamic around intimacy. Venus rules your seventh house of relationships. So there may be something around what you share with others, what you receive from others. And that can change quite a lot with Uranus going through there. Uranus going through the eighth house can really shake up the foundations of a marriage, for example. So if Uranus going through the seventh has made your marriage fragile, or on the contrary, maybe shook it up in a way that made it feel much more alive, you'll notice the consequences when Uranus goes through the eighth house. This also can be an opening psychologically to your more spiritual side, your mystical side. Venus rules your 12th, which is also the unconscious and the things that are intuited, or the spirit world, the spirit realms. And Venus also with Uranus can be deeply insightful around things that are like the more mystery school things, astrology, divination of some kind, just shamanism, learning all these different ways of living in the world in a multi-dimensional way. And that will certainly open you up to a lot of that, especially as Pluto is in the fourth, which is about shaking the foundations of your psychological life, your psycho-emotional life. And that can also be quite literal, shaking the foundations of your life, preparing you to move, preparing you to change your relationship to home, family, property, and all those kinds of things. So a really busy time. Mercury is stationing or about to station retrograde a few days later in your 10th house of career. So a lot of this has a lot to do with thinking about your future, how you're interacting, what your career goals are, what your social status is, of course, as well. Mercury rules that eighth house as well, rules the 11th house. So there's something here about what you share with another, what you receive from another. If this, for somebody who works with clients, for example, or patients or something like that, this would be about restructuring that, either getting new patients in or new clients in, or needing to do something different in your everyday to accommodate a change in that dynamic, or your intention to move in a new direction in your career. And this could be a really good time, July and into August, where you are thinking in terms of how do I restructure this to accommodate this new structure to work one-on-one with people. Right, so good luck with that, Scorpio. I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening, the full moon is happening in your money house. It's the house of your possessions, your values, what supports you in life. That support is also in terms of your physical self and in terms of your diet, for example, not meaning you have to cut back on calories, but the way you eat regularly or the way you consume stuff. Food and substances of all kinds, the way you consume consumer goods of all kinds as well. Maybe the moon is bringing your awareness to the state of your finances, or to the state of your bank account, or the state of your assets in some form. Saturn and Neptune are in the fifth. Generally speaking, Saturn in the fifth is not conducive to taking risks. Saturn is kind of like, wait a minute, I don't think we should do this. And whereas Aries on the fifth house is quite a risk taker, and that's why Sagittarius is kind of that risky, let's go kind of energy. But with Saturn there's a questioning around this. And so this is the moon that is reflecting this. Maybe it's about how you're showing up. Do you feel the support that you need to show up as who you are? Is this a financial question? Do you have enough? Are your resources strong enough? Are you with the right people? Of course, now we also have Uranus and Venus both in your opposite house. So opposing yourself, you've got the other across the table from you. These are the people who are important in your life, business partners, life partners, the good friends. There's something very powerfully changing here. Also, as Pluto goes into your third, which can change the dynamic around your friends and your neighborhood and how you engage with all that, how you engage with what is true, how you engage with how you express truth. And especially with Saturn ruling that third house, ruling Pluto from the fifth with Neptune, both of them soon to retrograde, Neptune already at this point retrograding. The question may be, am I being truthful about who I am? Am I showing up in that way that is, warts and all true to myself? And can I be okay with that? Your ruler is in the eighth house. So there's something that you're really reflecting from a deeper place, um, reflecting from a place of maybe crisis or a fear of intimacy or a recognition, at least that you have been, or that there's been something that felt really vulnerable, and now you're willing to look at it. You're willing to deal with it. This can be very positive because it's Jupiter in a place of exaltation, but it's the eighth house, which tends to be a bit more behind the scenes. It's not necessarily something that everybody's going to really notice. Sorry, something just fell. It's kind of windy today, thank God. We're getting a little relief from the heat. But with Uranus, Venus in the seventh, changing relationships, and then Jupiter in the eighth, it's like, well, maybe I can open up and trust a little more. Maybe again, that there's been a lot of wounding around relationship for Sag. Um, a lot of defensiveness as well as wounding. So this can also be where the moon is recognizing this. What is it that I'm valuing? What are my values in life? Am I living through them? Am I living in integrity around that, in my love affairs, in my way of finding my joy, finding my happiness? So it's a great time for curiosity around all of those different things because you're opening up to new possibilities around relationship. And Venus is giving you, Mercury is giving you a new vision also in terms of what this moment requires of you, what you think you're here for right now, and how you want to reach into a new vision, perhaps for yourself, or a new philosophy that's guiding you towards where you want to go. And Mercury is really slow at the moment, so you're going to have a lot of time between now and August to really reflect on these bigger questions of where am I going with all of this, as the moon is just highlighting this bigger issue of what supports me. Am I working through am I conscious of my values, let's say, because your values support you. If you don't have values, you're all over the place. There's nothing more dangerous than a Sagittarius that doesn't have values because they just run around kind of projecting out to everybody else based on ideology rather than based on any principles or values. So you want to get clear about that as well. Mars in the 10th with the South Node, this is going to be something to do with your image and how that's changing and how you're showing up, or maybe career-wise, or in terms of your social status. Because again, there's just a huge change in terms of your relationship sector. That is maybe something that could be quite sudden or surprising, where you realize, oh, wow, there's this thing that is no longer what I want to do, this job, or maybe the job's not there anymore. The career track just feels less and less important, and the inner process and your grounding and your home and family and your connection to all of that feels really, really important. And that South Node Mars, very, very tight now, and I'll do a separate video on that, is an opportunity for you to reconsider what your ambitions are. There's maybe a new cycle of goals around your career, around your also parenting potentially as well. Mars rules your fifth house of children. 10th house is about parenting and taking responsibility. The full moon is also about integrity. So where am I in or out of integrity in terms of my role as a parent, or perhaps with my parents? Maybe you're the one now that is parenting your parents after, a certain point. I'm in that stage right now where you're flipping the dynamic from being the child to being the parent of your parents. Perhaps that's you as well. All right. Well, good luck with whatever's going on with you, Sagittarius. And Jupiter is in great dignity and visible, your ruler. So you've got a year of this now where you can really, really expand your sense of your deepest, richest purpose in life and understand so much about yourself, understanding intimacy, understanding, all these mystery aspects of life, understanding what it means to be really in an emotional bond, in a healthy emotional bond, and even to the extent that that becomes something very lasting for you, especially once Saturn reestablishes itself in your fifth house after February. This is you're in the preparation phase right now. So good luck with that, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to shift back here for the Capricorn full moon, and we put Capricorn on the first house. And indeed, Capricorn was rising at the time of the full moon on the 10th of July, universal time, at least in London. So we've got Capricorn. You're the highlight of this full moon. It is your full moon. Last year you got two. This year you only get one. And that's the normal. One full moon this year is quite enough because it's quite an intense year, especially as your ruler Saturn has changed signs and is preparing to retrograde. So there's a highlight on you, your role, how you take responsibilities. Sort of the everyday experience of a Capricorn is very much loaded with guilt and responsibility, and there's often not really sure why. And yet this is part of something that you can become aware of. And especially because of that Saturn with Neptune and borderline ready to station retrograde, it does put a lot of let's say, energy for self-reflection for Capricorn. And the Uranus-Venus connection in your sixth house is changing you day by day. And your day by day might change through something quite sudden that can actually be potentially health related. It can be career related. Venus represents your career. Something's big and changing in the dynamic around career. Pluto is in your money house, and it's close to trining all of this energy, and it will be holding for a couple of months. And it really is a pattern between now and 2026. So the way that you work every day, your job and your money story is very much tied. But also the sixth house is your health. The second house is what supports you. So it's about maybe recognizing what you need to change, how you need to show up in a very different way to achieve better health, achieve lasting health. Venus in the sixth house is helpful in the sense that there's a sense of positivity around it, and the Uranus is shaking something up for sure. It depends on your natal chart what it's shaking up. But also the Venus dynamic can lend itself to being self-indulgent, and it has just Uranus and Venus have been very cozy in your fifth house there of self-indulgence as well. So maybe if there is a health issue, check your day-to-day habits. Are you a little overly indulgent? Are you eating too many times in a restaurant, for example, too many drinks or whatever the thing is? I don't know. Just as one opportunity, one thing that's possible. The dynamic around work can also be helped if you're working with colleagues or employees, people who work for you or with you, is the sixth house, and that's also where Venus adds a lot of charm, a lot of support. So this can also be that your colleagues are changing. The work dynamic around your colleagues or employees is changing. They've told you, I quit, I'm out, or you are saying, I'm sorry, I have to let you go, or there's a shifting of work if you're working in terms of a firm situation. If you're working for yourself, then this is more about the people you choose to work with that are helping you. The person who does your IT or the person who does your bookkeeping or whatever, that can also be part of that dynamic for change. But the sixth house is overall your day-to-day life and how it's changing. This is part of where your ruler Saturn in the fourth house is making you more clear and serious about setting up a foundation for long life. Mercury itself is in the house of longevity, the eighth house, which has an impact, of course, on your day-to-day life. Mercury is ruling your sixth house from the eighth. And so there's something here also where you're recognizing patterns that may be inherited, especially with the Saturn in the fourth, with Neptune, inherited patterns or inherited problems, like quite literally problems. That's also the sixth house. What you're ready to do about that, and what you're ready to just say, this is not my problem. I'm not doing this. I don't have to show up to every fire. I don't have to be the one that is there for everybody else. I'm now recognizing where I need to show up for myself much more. So that Mercury will be retrograding in your eighth. That's about intimacy, about what you share with others, but also what you receive from others. And this can be very helpful right now where you've got Jupiter in the seventh. It feels much more conducive to feeling that sense of bonding or support or a desire to be with others. This will depend on your natal Jupiter, your natal chart in general, but it can be very conducive to a relationship, or it can actually even end a relationship, but it's for your greater good. And you actually end up thinking, yeah, that wasn't easy, but wow, does that ever improve the quality of my everyday life? Um, Yes, so the moon is considered to be in detriment here because it's not in the sign of its rulership, and it's ruled by Saturn, which is a bit cold and dry, and the moon is moist and warm, and it's about a dynamic of loving and caring, and the moon is much more pragmatic in Capricorn, and so you're also focusing on what is real and pragmatic for you, but don't forget also that the connection that you actually desire with others requires you to be a little bit more emotional, or at least bonded, not emotional in the sense of histrionic, but in the sense of being there with other people. And certainly that's a bigger part of the Jupiter in the seventh as well. Your exaltation ruler Mars is in the ninth house, so you've got a lot of dynamic around what feels important in your sense of purpose or your sense of what is your ideal for this moment in time, kind of like a vision that you hold. Certainly, that seems to also have changed. The ninth house can also represent father. And since the fourth house, 10th house axis can represent your parents in general, there may be issues here that you have to deal with that are about your parents, about something sudden, something of a sudden letting go, sudden loss, sudden change, a sudden need to show up in some way. Um, and that can also be in terms of your role as a parent, where you're like, okay, now I need to really step up because my kids need me more. It's not necessarily negative. It's more about how you're interacting, how you're dealing with something. There can also be a question of your vision for your life, that you had a purpose that you thought was really, really nailed down. And now it's kind of like, what? Why am I doing this thing? There's a new sense of goals and aims in your life right now that's much more pragmatic, much more grounded in your everyday life. And that's because the North Node is in the third, South Node, where Mars is approaching in the ninth, is saying, yeah, it used to be about that, but it's not really this anymore. And Mars rules your house of the future, the 11th house, as well as your fourth. And so there's something that you're looking at your future in a different way. It's like, no, this is, if I want that, I need to do it this way. Or if I want that, I need to be with these people, not these people. Um, yeah. So it's all very solid for Capricorn. Also, you have lots going on in, like, all of the cardinal signs have this, lots going on in the angles of the chart. So there's something structural, something important that's shifting right now, and it's bringing you to a longer lasting change. And especially with the moon, it really reflects on you. What do I want? How am I acting through the different ways of showing up in my life, especially in relationship? What do I need? Because Capricorn is often really focused on what it can do for others. And really, this is an opportunity with the full moon in Capricorn to say, what do I need? Um, and how am I showing up? Am I showing up in a way that is choosing to look after others, when actually my heart's not in it? Or can I show up in a different way that is much more supportive of my needs, but also allowing people to recognize my boundaries so I don't get grumpy, right? Because then you've got Mars on the fourth, which can make you grumpy, but you're angry at yourself most of the time, Capricorn. And this is maybe what to reflect on with the Saturn Neptune in the retrograde, and understanding your role in that and what you need. And after the winter, as things come forward in, or rather after the next 6 months or so, as things come forward into February, when Saturn and Neptune come back here, you'll have a clearer understanding of what it is that you want to really base your life on, in a very long lasting way. All right, Capricorn, make the most of it, and I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius. This full moon is happening in your 12th house of the unconscious. It's the sort of more cosmic area of the chart, which Aquarius loves very much, and connecting with the more spiritual aspects of life. And you have Saturn with Neptune both approaching their retrograde cycles, really slow in the sky right now in the third house. So you're putting in a lot of awareness or effort, or focus on your everyday activities, on your goals, your short-term aims, the things you need to do in a practical way. It's certainly a time that feels very busy for Aquarius. You've got Jupiter there on the sixth house. And so that's quite busy. But Saturn, your ruler in the third, is showing you where you were about to engage, and there's something that's almost ready, but not quite. And so there's an opportunity here for you to slow your roll a little bit and step back from the busyness that you may have engaged in too many things. And now you're realizing, wait, no, I got to sort this out first. Jupiter from the sixth house is ruling your second house of money. So your everyday work is having a direct consequence, or your everyday, let's say, schedule, your everyday way of showing up is having a direct consequence on how you earn money, how you feel supported or not. You seem to be contributing a lot at this time, which is great, but also there may be a recognition with Saturn, Neptune in the third of how you interact with people around you, with your siblings, cousins, neighbors, the way you're learning stuff or the way you're needing to work through your skills or use your skills, that needs to be reconsidered. And another very important dynamic for Aquarius is this movement of Venus and Uranus into your fifth house of self-expression. You're going to be even more Aquarian after Uranus moves into your fifth house. And so this is a dynamic which gives you a lot more of a sense of flexibility around how you show up. It can be around children as well. That there may be a dynamic in your own children's lives or around your decision to have or not have children. Often, Uranus, when it goes through the fifth house, people are a little ambivalent around children. It's like, yeah, fine. I do, I don't, especially if that's natal, if you have Uranus in the fifth house. But this won't be natal because you're not thinking about having children if you're 84 years old. But just saying, this can be a time where you're kind of ambivalent around the whole question. So let it just remain a question for now, because Uranus will come back from November. It goes back into your fourth house, and then from April next year, it goes into your fifth house. And you might be finding that you've answered the question, or the question answers itself, and you are going to deal with the outcome. Mercury is in the house of relationship, and that's ruling your fifth house, where Uranus and Venus are. And that's the house of love, the fifth house as well, romance and love and what you want to create. And it might be that you're realizing you've got new partnerships, but you're not quite sure how that needs to pan out or how that needs to work. So there is a retrograde cycle that will help you to establish this new foundation with partnerships, which can be quite helpful, having that just moment of delay. So there's kind of a hesitation around partnerships, or there may be even an outright disagreement because we've got Mars with the South Node in the eighth house, that you're maybe not on the same page about things. Yeah, so it's an opportunity to question, let's say. So let yourself question. It's a great month for a lot of introspection, reflecting on these things, reflecting on what's necessary for you to say, perhaps in relationship. How do I need to communicate something? And this is also with Saturn, Neptune in the third. Is this true? Am I hearing that correctly? Do I? Have I understood fully, or are people understanding me? Am I able to connect with people and have myself heard? And obviously, if you're feeling unheard, and that's maybe the Saturn and Neptune in the third, you're not coming from a sincere place. You're coming from an agenda. So make sure that you're more clear about that as well. That can also be the Mars in the eighth, where there can be an agenda around how you're controlling outcomes with other people behind the scenes. And that with the South Node will have consequences that you'll have to deal with. And that's also the moon highlighting the 12th house of your unconscious and habits or ways of showing up that are unconscious. There may be a dynamic here where you're recognizing with that moon in the 12th house that there's certain ways of being in your everyday life where there might be this dynamic of martyring yourself where you don't realize it. You're taking responsibility for things that actually are not yours to take responsibility for. Especially with Jupiter in the sixth at this time. And of course, the 12th house also represents just generally your spiritual nature. And here you have an opportunity also to become much more aware of your deeper inner spirit, what you have faith in, what you believe, and what you reach out for when you need support. So this is a great opportunity as well to get clear about that, especially with Mars in the eighth. It's overcoming fear, overcoming trauma, overcoming patterns that you've absorbed from your ancestors or from family. Right. Good luck with all of that, Aquarius, and have fun with Uranus in your fifth house. It looks like the next few months can be very, very enlightening for you. And also check out my video with Uranus going into Gemini so you can see more about that. All right. Pisces, you have your ruler in the fifth house, so you're feeling pretty good, as well as the North Node in your first house. So there's a lot of feelings around I'm moving in a new direction, I'm changing, things are expanding in my life. And we've got this moon in your 11th house of the future. So there's a lot of your attention focused on that vision that you have. What is the longer term vision for my life? This can also be around your social circle, who's going along for the ride here. And that might imply the romantic aspects as well in terms of what's my relationship dynamic and how's that going to affect my future. Um, Especially because Jupiter, your ruler, is in the fifth house and very supportive in terms of romance or bonding around things that you find fun to do or what you enjoy doing, bonding around your children. This can also be that your children themselves are having a really great experience of their lives at this time, also their future. But it's also on a very pragmatic level, it's about grounding yourself in a new future, taking responsibility for that vision for the future and also for earned income. The money that you earn from what you do is the 11th house, and your possessions and your money stored or the money that you have available to you, um, as well as your values and your stuff, your possessions is the second house, and all the things that support you are there. And with Saturn Neptune there, you've only just had a glimpse now for a couple of months of how you're managing all of that. And that's the ruler of that moon is Saturn from your second house to the 11th. And so what's available to you, your finances, your money, the liquidity, how you invest, how you are taking care of all of that. This is all very, very relevant at this time. Do listen to the introduction around that because it's very relevant around being real, not fantasy thinking, not wishful thinking, but really taking responsibility because this is about your money story. But also, it's about your family. The second house is family. And that's where we also find Uranus moving into the house of lineage and your family of origin and your home and maybe your actual physical house. And so there's something changing around that as well. That might actually be quite literally that, family is growing or family is shrinking. There's dynamics that are shifting around family in general. The circumstances, you could say, around family, who lives where, how do I need to handle all of this? Because Saturn in the second might have you taking on more responsibility around family, for example. And you've got Pluto in the 12th, so you're also part of your dynamic right now is really understanding issues around everything to do with spirituality and your connection to what you might call an eternal life or what is not visible, not tangible. But the 12th house also represents loss and it's ruled by Saturn. So beware of any financial loss or financial mismanagement or mistakes. Take care of things in terms of your finances to make sure that everything is correct. And especially as Mercury is in your sixth house and it will retrograde, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to clear up stuff that you have to deal with in your everyday work or your everyday management around things like that, the bookkeeping and stuff like that. That's very sixth house stuff. And Mercury rules your seventh house of relationships as well as the fourth house of what grounds you or what gives you stability and so on. And so there's a feeling of instability right now around all of that, around the dynamics of relationship, the dynamics of what feels solid, let's say. It doesn't feel so solid right now. Mars is approaching the South Node, and there will be a big change in terms of some relationship or a quality of relating that can be there as well. And Yeah, so it's hard to be sure in terms of a generalization, but certainly some dynamic around relationship. With Jupiter in the fifth, it gives you great optimism. It gives you an opportunity to feel like, okay, I can still enjoy my life, have fun, and be curious and expand into life, even when things are difficult. This is a kind of a Piscean signature as well, but especially so when Jupiter is there in its exaltation in a lucky house like that. Mars is ruling the other lucky house, which is the ninth, which is your vision for your life and your life purpose. So again, depending on your natal chart, you may be feeling okay about everything. It's just that you're in a period of flux. Mars also rules that money house, so there may be something that you're having to deal with in terms of a bond with somebody, a relationship around, what you're receiving or what you need to claim from somebody that has to do with money. And of course, values is a big one. So maybe there's a dynamic around relationship where you're realizing this won't work because we don't share values. And again, that's a good thing in the sense of, okay, that's clear now. I'm finding clarity. And the Uranus story with Venus in your fourth, Venus is your exaltation ruler. So helpful to see what Venus is doing also, along with Jupiter. You find more instability around your sort of foundation in life. There's a feeling of maybe also potentially freedom as well, where you feel like, okay, now I'm ready for change. I want my house and home to change. I want my relationship to family to change. I want there will be a shift in the pattern of how you relate to your family of origin, of how you relate to property, of how you relate to what grounds you in general. And that also can be what makes you feel emotionally and psychologically secure. Venus also rules your eighth house, which is about the more psychological or hidden aspects of yourself. And it's in the fourth, so you're ready to talk about it, you're ready to bring it to the fore. And that's ruled by the Mercury in the sixth. So it seems like there's also even a health bent to this. It's like for the sake of my health or for the sake of my everyday life, for the sake of improvement, I need to examine these things. And there seems to be a boost in terms of doing that. So good luck with all of this, Pisces, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, and I will see you in the next video. And for anyone who's still watching, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I really do appreciate your comments and your support, all your likes and all the things there as well. So I look forward to seeing you in another video. Bye-bye.